के साथ भी करता है। के साथ भी करता है और ब्लैक वो भी करता है, अपना भी करता है।
Hello, everyone. Hi, Wardah. Hi, Akbar.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Hi, Dr. Asid.
Hi, how are you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Okay, cool. Hello, everyone. Hi, Akbar. Hi, Wardah.
Hi.
All right, good to have you guys here. So we'll just start the webinar and then more people can join in.
Okay, please.
All right, good evening, everyone. Morning to those joining us from different parts of the world. Welcome to our MEDJACK webinar series. These webinars are held once a month, and the main purpose of these webinars is to start a conversation around ICE, innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship, and a chance to share your personal journey around innovation and beyond. We use our book, MEDJACK, as that conversation starter. MEDJACK, AKU's first ever digital book, has been co-authored by a total of 14 co-authors. It's available on Amazon, and for Pakistan, a digital platform called Kobo, we also have print copies for it available. I'd like to introduce the moderator for today's session, Dr. Asid Mia, Chairman of Emergency Department at AKU and Director of CCIT. Good to have you here, Dr. Asid.
Hi, thank you so much, Marine.
I would also like to welcome our guests for today's session, the first one being Mr. Akbar Allana, who's an award-winning film producer, industrialist, and entrepreneur. He serves as CEO of Grayscale, a boutique film production company, as well as director of Alson's Group, a vertically integrated group of high-tech engineering concerns with footprints in the automotive, defense, aerospace, lighting, and medical device sectors, which also includes his startup, Alson's Technology. He has served as a trustee and advisor for several nonprofit and charity organizations in Pakistan and has worked with a number of marginalized communities such as transgenders, the deaf, differently abled, and mentally unwell. His films have been screened at top-tier festivals worldwide, won numerous international awards, and helped raise valuable funds to support disenfranchised persons. He's also served on the managing committees of industrial trade bodies in Pakistan. Hi, Akbar. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a speaker for today's session.
Hi, Marian. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I would also like to welcome Dr. Wardah Rafaqat, who's a recent graduate of the AKU MBBS program. She started MCon with her partner, Syed Mohammed Akil Abadi, to build a platform that connects hospitals with patients as well as with other hospitals to facilitate a coordinated healthcare response. Since its conception, MCon has won Best Project in the Healthcare Track at the MIT Hackathon, and more recently, it came runners-up at the National TI University Global Pitch Competition. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a speaker today.
Thank you for having me.
For viewers, this will be an interactive session, and you may put your comments, questions in the chat space provided. I would also request everyone to mute their mics, and over to you, Dr. Asid.
Thank you, Marine. That was a really great introduction of our speakers today, and I am really thankful to both Akbar and Wardah for giving us the time being here on this panel today. And typically, Akbar and Wardah, you might be familiar. I'm not sure if you've attended any of our previous sessions, but what we tend to do is, which we have stopped doing, but I'll kind of repeat for the folks who haven't heard about these things before that, we used to have like a very brief presentation about MEDJACK, just a few slides so that people could be quickly updated about, you know, why was there a need for this particular book, and what's the content of the book. And so there are different chapters, and so people would kind of like, the hope was that people would kind of like get a better understanding of the different chapters and the particular chapter that we are discussing as a starting point. So we've stopped doing that because there's kind of with the assumption that over a year and a half, people are more familiar with the content of the book. But if you're not, I've put the link in the chat space. It's medjack.net. So please do take a look even while you're listening in to this particular webinar, and you'll get a fairly good idea as to the length and breadth of the book and the different chapters. Chapter 4 of the book is about incubation, and that's why we have invited Akbar and Wardah to this particular session. And that's why we chose chapter 4, because chapter 4 talks about the process of startups and incubating the startups, so that when you put in business incubation strategies, then you have sustainability being built into those particular healthcare related startups. And a lot of our work has been done at AKU and past AKU. And so we focused our time and effort, a lot of our time and effort has been focused on student-led or student-centric startups, and hence Wardah is part of this particular panel, and Akbar will also be able to kind of give us his input as to how things could be done for early stage startups, perhaps. And in case I forget to ask that question specifically of Akbar, may Akbar, whenever you feel like, you can jump in and you can tell us more about, from your perspective, how can you or established startups or organizations or companies could help student-led or student-centric startups of the kind that Wardah is going to describe to us as we get into the questions. So hopefully kind of like lay the land, you get a good lay of the land as to how we're going to talk, what we will be talking about, and why do we have two individuals who are representing early stage versus perhaps late stage startups, as well as an established company in the case of Akbar. Okay, so having said that, I'm going to start off with Akbar. Akbar and I go back a long way. Akbar and I were not in the same batch in school, but I was a year senior to Akbar, so respect, Akbar. And so
Age,
it was
age
really
before beauty.
age before beauty. 1 year doesn't really matter that much, I guess. I used to hang out with a lot of people from Akbar's batch and Akbar's class as well. So Akbar, tell us about, you could for the audience, you could give them a quick update about the National Health Incubator, or NHIP, the P being for pilot. So, what was that about, and how did you become part of that, and what was your entrepreneurial journey as part of the National Health Incubator? And you can talk about your own startup as a case study as well.
Okay, so just quickly, as you've mentioned, we're part of a group of companies. We're an established group of companies. And the question arises, why does a established group of companies enter into a incubator program for startups? Well, the reason why we did that was because during COVID, we took a decision to kind of realign our businesses and work towards a health sector. As you know, we've developed some medical devices, one of which has been approved and is available in the market, and another couple which are in various stages of approval. So around the time, we had been about a year into development of medical devices. We knew very little about the healthcare industry prior to this. This was done more as a reaction to the crisis caused by COVID. And, as a lot of engineering companies worldwide kind of decided, let's use our facilities to help as much as we can. So we were in the midst of that, and I was on Twitter and I saw, I think it was AKU posted that there was a health incubator. Now, I've found this whole incubator and accelerator stuff very interesting from the outside. But this felt like the perfect opportunity to be involved. And because we were starting up in a new sector or new industry, we had launched a new company, it kind of fit. And also the NHI also had a provision that established companies that were entering into the medical sector could also apply. So it just seemed like the perfect kind of intro to what startups, how they're structured, what kind of, how they operate, how incubation programs operate. So all those things. And then obviously having a established institution like the AKU and the AKDN behind it was also very appealing. We wanted that kind of interaction with the doctors, with the the professionals at AKU. So it kind of ticked a lot of boxes for us, and that's why we applied. We got in, and it was a brilliant decision. I've nothing but praise for the NHI program and the Accelerate Prosperity and the CCIT team. In a nutshell, that's our journey.
Thank you. Great. Akbar, thank you so much for kind of like summarizing the journey itself. In the interest of time, it'll be great if both of you kind of keep your answers kind of like, summarized like you've done, Akbar. And then people listening in, we really want these sessions to be interactive. So feel free to write your comments or your questions, and then I'll be very happy to interrupt or disrupt Akbar and Wardah's thought processes and ask them those questions, or get them to expand on those comments. So I'm going to like move to Wardah for a bit and then ask her to tell us about her startup called MCon. So that Akbar and the rest of the folks over here also understand what MCon was. What was your motivation, Wardah? Why were you, and what year were you at that time? I believe you're a fourth year student, third year, fourth year when you started this process. You might have been thinking about it even prior to whatever year you started working on it. So tell us more about what was your motivation and what was your journey like? Summarize it for us, please.
Right. So yeah. So the first time when I started thinking about MCon and recognized that there was a need for it present in our healthcare system, I think that was back in third year, and that was because I was in the ER one night and it was really late, and what happened was that there was this patient who came. He was an elderly gentleman, and the ER was on diversion at that point, and they were asking him to leave, but he was in a lot of distress. And as I was looking at him, I thought, well, why can't he find out that the ER at AKU is on diversion before he comes to the hospital? And even when he is at the hospital and he has to be turned away, why can't we tell him which hospital to go? Should he go to Liaquat? Should he go to South City? Which hospital should he even go to at 3 a.m. in the morning, right? It's very difficult for patients to transport. And then, of course, there's all of that stress related to their illness as well. And so I started thinking about how we could provide this information to patients and also allow communication between hospitals in a more standardized and safe and encrypted manner. And so that's where the idea came from. And then gradually I worked on it. I worked with CCIT, Dr. Asad was a huge advisor in this process. And we developed a product, which is a web platform and a mobile application, which can do exactly that. It can connect hospitals with one another, and it can connect hospitals with patients.
Great. I mean, both of you are like really following the instructions really well. And so like almost like clockwork, right? Okay. इससे ज़्यादा नहीं बोलना. नहीं, ऐसा कोई बात नहीं है. Please, you can continue talking as well as Anita. But thank you, Wardah. So based on your experience, Wardah, and what you did as a third year and then a fourth year student, just before that, I'm an ER physician, and so the reality of ED diversions is strongly felt. And during COVID, there was a huge thing, and then. So what you demonstrated, Wardah, was identifying a problem, empathizing with a group of, with patients, and those patients could have been your family members, could have been, just as a student, and you're seeing patients in the hospital and the ER or whatnot, and then kind of putting together something around that. So it's very empathetic or empathy driven or empathy centric, and that's a great starting point for entrepreneurship. So you've identified a problem, and it's a problem, it's a real life problem, and you're empathizing with those folks that you're interested in solving that particular problem. Now, in retrospect, Wardah, do you think you understood or you were doing this because of empathy, or was it something that you developed that sense of empathy later on, perhaps after talking to our other innovators and entrepreneurs, and then you also pitched your idea at MIT, and perhaps you heard other startups as well. What is your sense?
No, I think I definitely started out with the empathy because when I was in the ER at that time, like I remember I was getting my immediate response was, I'm getting treatment here, but this person can't, right? And then it kind of, and so there was that, but also there was, well, this person is in a lot of distress. Can I make the situation better somehow? So those were the two motives that I started out with, or like the two ideas that I started out with. And I just wanted to kind of create a system that was able to help people who were in a similar situation.
Okay, great. So, so Akbar, just if you were to just kind of build on the concept of student-led or student-centric innovation and entrepreneurship, because it's this theme. There's a reason why I'm kind of, not just because Wardah was an AQ student and she's a doctor. She just graduated, I believe, last year, if I'm not mistaken. And so it's Dr. Wardah Rafaqat. This year, okay. So, so Dr. Rafaqat, when she's a third year student, she identified a problem, and a lot of students of AQ or other medical students outside of AQ, they get interested in research, and so a lot of students want to focus a lot more on research versus something like startups. So we've been building the case for startups, innovation, entrepreneurship for several years. If someone like Wardah or Wardah's team of students were to come to you as an established entity, you work in the health tech space, health innovation space, what would be your advice for them? And I'm not specifically asking Wardah about challenges with MCon is concerned, but if you were to think about generic challenges for students in health innovation and entrepreneurship, how do you think some established startups and companies could help these students?
So it's really interesting because we've been working with a number of academic institutes for quite a few years before COVID and before we got into the medical field. One of the primarily in the engineering space. So we work with NED, with NUST, with various other academic institutes, not just providing them work placements and internships, but also working on their projects or university projects. One of the areas that we find lacking in academia is that they stress a lot on research and development, but not so much on real world application. So they'll create something great in a lab that is fantastic. It could change the world, but then it doesn't go beyond that phase. It doesn't actually have the kind of impact or reach or industrialization capability that it could. And that's where we've been kind of trying to work with industry. We're working with AKU as well on this. As you know, we recently signed an NDA to industrialize some of the devices that you guys have been working on, and similar with other universities. So I think it's very important both for academia to have the link with industry and for industry to have the link with academia. Obviously, I cannot do everything at my factories. I don't have those resources or those those kind of labs or those kind of fundings, etc. So if two types of institutions and perhaps even government institutions, a third type, if we kind of collaborate and work together, we can actually realize a lot more than if we did in isolation.
Great points, actually. Yeah. So I was thinking of, when you mentioned the government, then the Ignite Tech Fund, for example, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then we've got entities such as Accelerate Prosperity, and we've got AKDN, and then we've got Alsons, and right. So an interplay, I guess. So that's
exactly.
what when we're talking about like building the innovation ecosystem, and I think in Wardah's case, I do recall that she'd come to us, and then we kind of connected her to some other entities. But for very busy medical students or nursing students, I think unless they have the drive or the motivation, somebody like Wardah, who actually would not take no for an answer, and she kept saying, no, you got to explore this. And so so I think motivation and drive, I think, is really, really important, because otherwise, if you're unable to stick to something like this and take it all the way through. I don't even know what that means exactly. What is the destination, right? Because then several individuals don't keep up with those startups as well. Anyways, thank you for that, Akbar. So Wardah, Sohaib has asked if you could share a link for MCon. Maybe you could put it in the chat box, or Abdi is also here, I guess, or he could do that, either of you. Thanks. Acha. So, okay. So one more. So Akbar, so you have this, you've also been a film production guy or a company, I guess, right? Grayscale. So yeah, I mean, what's that about, right? So health tech, Grayscale is, are you like are you doing the CCIT on us? Because
I
you
am
like get
indeed.
into other things.
I actually believe that one should not limit themselves. You know, one can wear several hats at the same time. This is the way the world is evolving. This is the way people are evolving. I mean, when we were at school, you either did physics or you did economics, or you did, you know, you were put into a box, and that was the rest of your life. But now I think the world has changed, and, you know, even academia has changed, industry has changed, and there's certain intersections between various industries, and particularly between the arts and the sciences. There are very strong intersections. And, you know, running a factory or running an engineering company is also a very creative industry. You're creating products, you're creating parts, you're creating you know, technologies. So for me, it's kind of blurred the line between art and science, or industry and arts, or film or music, and just keeping with that kind of ethos. And it also works for my personality, because, you know, I kind of like to do various things, and it works for me. So I don't know if it works for everybody.
I hear you. It works for me as well. And so great point. So diversity, right? So I think that's yeah. And if different different domains actually talk to you or speak to you, then why not, right? Why not mix things as well?
I mean, I know some doctors who are great musicians, who are great photographers, who are great writers. So, you know, but are they a doctor first or a musician after, or is it, you know, should it really matter? You know,
and that's a great question. Does it really matter? You know, what comes, chicken versus the egg?
Exactly.
Pehle kya hua, to phir kya hua? And some folks actually still don't, after years and years of this, still don't know who exactly they are. So great point for people who are listening in, that you know, if you have an interest in videography like Akbar did and does, and or writing, or photography, or dance, or theater, doesn't matter. You could be a physician, you could be a nurse, and you could have additional interests, and keep up with them, because you never know how that becomes your saving grace even, right? So, you know, you can do things, and when you, and especially with the 21st century being chaotic and burnout potential for a healthcare professional. So good reminder. Akbar, so tell me, what did you think of this very recent movie Joyland, making it big at the Cannes
I think it's great.
Film Festival? Because
great. In fact, there are a few films that are from Pakistan at Cannes this year. Joyland being one. There are a few. I believe there are 2 films in development that have made it to Cannes, to various programs. So I think it's an exciting time for the independent film industry as well in Pakistan. I actually think it's a really exciting time for Pakistan, leaving aside the political problems we're having. But, you know, the kind of incubation that's happening, the kind of startups, the kind of, you know, innovations that are happening, the kind of people that are coming out and doing new fabulous things, whatever field it is, it's really encouraging and quite you know, exciting.
great. Do you think, and this question is to both of you, Akbar and Wardah, do you think creativity, we tend to see more creativity come out of a place like Pakistan because of the chaos, because of the political milieu of a certain kind, religious, political angle, without getting into details of that? Do you think such a scenario actually facilitates a creative mindset or otherwise?
Most definitely.
And why do you say
Creation,
that?
I mean,
Yeah.
when you look at creation itself, it came from chaos, right? I mean, the whole theory of the Big Bang and whatever. So, and we're reflective of that ultimate creation. I mean, I don't want to get too spiritual or, and this is not the forum for that, but I certainly see a link between creativity and chaos. Or, you see the tortured artist, that's a stereotype, but it's true. The best creation comes from a place of hurt or anger or disruption.
Very true. Yeah. Pain and disruption, chaos. So what do you think, Wardah?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to point that we were talking about people being doctors and like exploring a creative side of themselves as well. And I don't know if you're familiar with the book This Is Going to Hurt, which was written by a doctor who then he left medicine and he started writing, and he's a very successful screen playwright right now. And then he also wrote about his experiences in medicine and why he ended up leaving the profession. So he went into all of that, but it's a hilarious book. I think it's one of the best books written that I've read about the medical profession out there. But as for whether there's more creativity in Pakistan because of the chaos, I personally don't feel that that's the case, because I feel like, yes, chaos and pain and all of that does contribute to a necessity for expression, which will then translate into different endeavors that people make to express themselves. But at the same time, I feel like there are certain resources or a certain way that you are not taught to think, but rather the opposite, allowed to think in whatever fashion you want to, that contribute to creativity. And I think that there's a lot of that has to do with the way that you were taught in school from a very early age, right? Like how whether you were taught to express yourself, think outside the box at that age. And I think that approach kind of follows throughout your life, and forms the basis almost of your creativity later on. So I think that of course there's talent in Pakistan, and but where isn't there talent, right? But I don't know if the political situation contributes to more creativity. I think perhaps if we had a more established education system which allowed and really encouraged creative thought, perhaps we would have even more of it. And another thing is that well, we were talking about how universities will create these projects and everything in during their, or academia will have research and all of that, but there isn't enough real world implementation. And I think that that's another place where we can really encourage creativity, because I feel that if you're able to translate this idea or product that you have and you're able to see results come out of it, that also really encourages people and like encourages not just you but also other people around you to invest themselves more in this, right? Because they see something come out of it. And I think that if we really create an environment where people can overcome the challenges with implementation, and we create an environment where we really encourage and reward creativity and creative solutions, then that might actually increase the amount of creativity we see in Pakistan. Yeah.
No, great points. Thank you. I'm going to assign both of you creativity advisors for us, so Akbar and Wardah, because you both have lots of interesting thoughts about, how can we enhance creativity in the nation. Okay, so we've got some questions piling up here, so let's move to the questions. And so Sidra is asking, who is this addressed to? Akbar. So long-standing industry inefficiencies are leading to affordability, outcome, and quality challenges and poor consumer experience. These inefficiencies are not new and provide the fertile ground for innovation to deliver high returns. What's your take on this, Akbar?
I mean, yeah, I mean, there's always room for innovation, and innovation doesn't have to just be tech specific. I mean, innovation is basically taking something that's been done and doing it in a more effective, more streamlined, more efficient way. So whatever the industry or whatever, the tech, there's always room for innovation. There's always room to do it better. There's always room to do it cheaper, faster, quicker. You know, so yeah.
Okay. That was simple. All right. So Akbar like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Do it. Just do it. Okay. Azib. Hi, Azib. Hi, Dr. Azib from MedAngle. Akbar, do you know about MedAngle? MedAngle is a very interesting
No, I
startup.
don't.
So
I wish I
maybe,
did.
so maybe Azib can tell us about MedAngle. But I'll read out his question as well. Azib, do you just want to go ahead and unmute and tell us about MedAngle, and then you can ask the question too?
Yeah, thank you for that. Really quick. Hi to all the panelists. Thank you for being here. My name is Dr. Azib. I'm the founder of MedAngle, and MedAngle is Pakistan's biggest online education platform for medical students and dental students as well, along with pre-medical. So we provide Pakistan's biggest ever question bank and conceptual bank for students to understand, practice, revise, and ultimately excel in their exams, and also as future physicians. We have over 30,000 questions. We have our questions answered more than 25 million times, and we have a team of more than 125 top medical students and doctors working on this platform since 2017. So on that note, my question for the panelists is that how do both of you obviously have experience with education institutions and innovation and so forth. So how do you approach this context when you are going to an education institution? As in, how do you approach educational institutions when it comes to being a startup or a private sector entity?
How do we approach them? I mean, usually they've come to us with their products or their their innovations, and and then they ask us to help them industrialize or to create prototypes or to I mean, what we're doing with a lot of universities is more hardware. It's not so much digital tech or software. So, for example, we're working with one university that created a product that for the agricultural industry. So we're working on building. It's a device that helps create feed into pellets for animals. So we're working on a device that converts that. With another university, we're working on a special type of battery that they created in a lab, but they want to industrialize it and make it available. So obviously we have NDAs and MOUs with them. Whatever information is coming from them that's proprietary, we kind of keep that protected. Obviously it's their IP, unless they give it to us or we do it in a joint manner. So there are various different ways in which we work with them from a legal or logistical perspective. But generally it's more their products that we are helping them industrialize. We haven't reached the stage where we've taken our thoughts and ideas and used their labs or their students to do the R&D, but that's something that we're considering and looking towards as well. I hope that answers your question.
So same question for Wardah. Wardah, what would you suggest? What advice do you have? Because you can base it off of your own experience here at AKU.
Well, I suppose it depends on what you're approaching them for, right? Because I imagine that what MedAngle would be approaching a university for would be very different from what I would approach a university for. So I guess that approach that motive kind of determines how you go about it. But yeah, like I would just say identify the people who are relevant and try to identify the people who will get things done and then talk to them.
So yeah, I think even from a practical perspective, right? Because I think actually I really do appreciate Azib's question, because I'm thinking about it like for someone who's coming from outside of an organization and they're trying to tap into that particular organization, which is huge and it's got its own departments and whatnot, right? So how do you navigate just one organization and then for a startup, I think that becomes important because they're trying to like kind of make these connections, and it could be daunting. It could be a daunting task for someone just to I'm not even talking about breaking into an organization, just kind of getting one connection so that they can kind of go further from that. And so it's challenging. I don't think it's just a one-time process, Azib. I think you've got to keep chipping away before you kind of like get into, present your story or your case to someone. It might have to be to 2 or 3 different departments or entities before sustainably that kind of idea takes off, right? So if you're an outsider trying to get into an organization. To your point, Akbar, I was just wondering, right? So, so you're saying that typically it's you people don't you don't approach
Well,
entities.
we have approached. It's not that we haven't. There have been times where we've wanted to build specialized test equipment, and we've gone to a university that was had a particular speciality in a particular type of engineering. So yes, we have done that. But most recently, it's been the universities that have been approaching us to, work with their students and their labs in commercializing their products. And I think that's something that obviously universities are creating fantastic things, but it's not within their mandate to commercialize or sell or industrialize, or nor do they have the resources or the people to do that kind of stuff. So, we've been lucky that, we've entered particular spaces at a time where there's not much competition. So we've been, we've had a first mover advantage with these universities. But, this is something that I think more industries and more universities should be doing, collaborating, doing stuff together, giving opportunity to students like Wardah was to, create stuff of value and, not have to just rely on a job. Once they graduate, they could be, their own leaders and their own, founders of companies as well.
Yeah, great point. So I'm also thinking that it'll be a great opportunity to kind of like disseminate this message as well. Like, so get if there's students or student teams that are prototyping, for instance, and they're kind of running into problems or hurdles. So Wardah, I mean, if as long as you're around or you hear about someone, you could always just refer them to Akbar, for example, or you could channel teams through us and we can reach out to Akbar and prototype. And Akbar, you've offered that to us before as well, right?
Yeah.
For prototyping and for hardware and so on and so forth. So I think that'll be a great opportunity. Okay, so let's move on. Ehsan is asking, incubators versus accelerators versus angel investors, which is better for startups in terms of sustainability? And this question we'd like to ask both of you.
I think all of the above. Take whatever you can, and as much of it as you can.
Would you suggest in a certain sequence, like angel investors?
I think it depends what stage you're at and what industry and who the accelerator is and who the angel investor is. I mean, I did say take whatever you can, but sometimes you don't want to because they're not a right fit. Someone could offer you a lot of money, but then the terms are they really creating value for your startup other than monetary? So, one has to be really sure about what they actually want. Is it just money, or do they want a special expertise, or do they want support in some other way? And it's not just VCs and angel investors, and there's all kinds of avenues that are open for young people who are starting out with their companies or their ideas. So it really depends where you are and what works for you.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. I think it depends on what kind of skill sets you have available in your team already, what you're looking for to grow your business, and also what stage of your business you're in. Are you scaling up? Are you developing the initial product? Where you're at the moment? But perhaps we could go into the pros and cons of all of these, or just even a description of all of these, just for people who are new at this and want to know what options there are available. I think Dr. Akbar would be a better person to do that.
Who, me? I'm not a doctor. I wish I was, but I'm not.
Sorry.
Akbar, nothing stops you, like you
Not
mentioned
yet,
earlier.
not yet.
So the sky is
Maybe
the
in a few
limit.
years.
Yeah, yeah.
You're still young. Akbar.
I just don't have the benefit of age on my side anymore.
So, okay, so let's see. I'm just going to keep powering through these questions. Okay, Nida is asking, hello, question for the panelists. Do you believe working in an LMIC setting actually positively fosters creativity and innovation? As discussed previously, a pained artist may be able to create a more heartfelt prose, or could it be considered looking at the situation through a rosy prospect, considering the roadblocks and such, actual roadblocks which happen in Pakistan, right? So what do you
I don't
think?
know. I think it's a bit of both. I had my point of view, Wardah had her point of view, and I don't think she was wrong. She was spot on in what she said. So maybe we could boil it down to, do you want to write a happy song or do you want to write a sad song? So,
No, but also it seems almost as though lower middle income countries have some form of monopoly over pain. Like I like to believe people in other countries also experience that.
yeah.
I think the concept, the pained artist or the pained whoever has connected with folks. Pain. Acha, okay. So Sidra is asking, as businesses continue to become more digital and industry lines continue to blur, how do you reimagine innovation ecosystems for the healthcare industry? Good question. Akbar and Wardah.
I personally think that, all these digital systems and digital startups and, technologies and all are great, but for any type of, any sort of tech to really have impact, there needs to be an enabling environment. And there's been so much focus, particularly in countries like Pakistan, on the tech side and the digital side, but the enabling platform for that tech to succeed is not there. For example, if we talk about the healthcare industry, there's a lot of focus on, having stuff available on apps and, being able to do things online. But there's still a need for medical devices and hospitals and oxygen and dialysis and all these things. Now, if those things are not available in hospitals, you could have the best tech in the world, but it's not going to serve any purpose. So yes, I do think digital tech is going to change things in a way that we cannot imagine. But in order for that to happen, we need to have certain, baselines and foundations set for those to really accelerate the way we'd like.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's a huge necessity for technology, especially in the bigger systems, right? I think a lot of people will come up with apps and they will come up with these quick technology fixes for problems, but what all of these kind of rely on is a greater system that needs to be present in hospitals and in our national health system, which has all of the data available that these systems then can rely on. And I mean, it's so surprising to me that one of the biggest health information management systems in America is based, the company itself is based in Pakistan, but there's such few hospitals in Pakistan itself which will use health information management systems. And so I think in order to keep up with the rest of the world, we definitely need to create a push for this technology to come into spaces, and especially in the establishments. And there is definitely a lot of room for innovation there.
You're on mute.
Yeah, so excellent points, both of you. And just wanted to kind of add to this, perhaps, and so Sidra's question kind of talks about tech, right? Digital industry lines continue to blur, but I think there's a huge role for low tech innovation as well. So we tend to think about tech being like, machine learning, data science, big heavy duty things, electronic health record, and so on and so forth. But what we've learned, at least what I've seen at AKU, even through our own processes, that at times it just requires a bit of process re-engineering, and you could demonstrate better outcomes just by minor tweaks in a system. For example, I, as an ER physician, throughput of the emergency department doesn't require high tech. It just requires mindsets that are willing to kind of, just think strategically and just figure out and facilitate the patient's movement through the ED. Do you really need high tech for that? People say, well, get this app, get that app, or, have this or that system in place. But I think we don't really need all of those fancy things, and you can just do things through minor, simple process tweaks and process reengineering and so on and so forth. So we constantly make the case for low tech, low cost healthcare innovations over here. And I think personally, I think that's the way to go. A lot of those times when we love and desire our technology, we don't have the money for it. So then what are you going to do? Not innovate because you don't have that, you don't have that technology, or you can still be smart and creative and innovative by minor tweaks in the system. So just a point for people to consider. Flip things on their heads and then consider low tech approaches, or low cost. Low tech will be low cost as well by default, I would think. Okay, so moving on. Eamon has a question. How can students patent their startups as a non-paid person? Great question. Ask the boss, go to your boss, go to your dean, go to the dean. Pay for my patent, please. I don't know. So Wardah, how did you deal with this issue? MCon, did you think of patenting it? How did you even decide that you were going to work with that particular company or someone who supported you in your endeavor?
Well, there weren't that many options to choose from. No, but I think no, I never patented it, and I'm to be honest, I'm not really sure about how the process would work. If I did choose to, that's not something I've looked into yet. But well, I chose to work with that company because they had a lot of prior experience developing applications. I knew people there. I was comfortable working with them. And yeah, like there were a lot of really good mentors of mine in that company, and so I thought I could, like, apart from like they provided me the resources to do it, but also I felt that I could that by working with them create an environment that was really conducive to my learning, and where I could lean on other people to help me and guide me through the process as well.
So Eamon, just adding to Vardah's point, right? So if you're part of an organization, a university, and your startup is a student project, for example, or during your studies or during your course of work at the organization, then you can get in touch with the Technology Innovation Support Center, Salim Sayani's shop, or there's the Office of Research, and they can guide you further. But all roads will lead to Salim Sayani's Technology Innovation Support Center, and he could be a good person for you to bounce off your ideas further. He can explain, and there's an ongoing workshop on patenting as well. So I don't know if you attended that, but some folks from CCIT did, and you can talk to them. Akbar, how do you deal with this? Not necessarily student startups, but your own companies, and is patenting something you always consider?
Well, we hadn't really considered it till we met Salim Sayani, and he's put a lot of stuff into our heads. And actually, I was there at AKU yesterday attending the workshop on patenting, and it was a fantastic workshop. So we're considering patenting some of our technologies, but we haven't quite gotten there yet. But from what I understood, you can apply for provisional patent, which gives you 1 year. When you apply for a patent, you obviously have to submit a lot of paperwork and a lot of details, and a lot of startups perhaps don't have the resources to provide that paperwork or pay for lawyers or do all that. So you can apply for a provisional patent, which gives you 1 year to get the paperwork complete. And during that 1 year, it kind of works like a semi-patent, meaning that if you do get the patent at the end of the year, it's applicable from the date that you submitted your provisional patent application. And it's not very expensive. I believe it's 6,000 rupees just to, get that provisional patent. The real expense is in the lawyers and the paperwork and, all the details that you put in. So again, yeah, like Asad said, ask Salim, talk to AKU. I'm sure they'll share that info with you.
Filing a patent in the US is expensive. That's like, I think $30,000 or something. So yeah, it's a different scale.
Lawyers are expensive there too.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so we have one last question from Sohaib, and then we'll just start wrapping up because we really wanted both of you to kind of leave motivational messages. Just so.
Oh, I thought you wanted us gone.
That too. I'm on call. I'm also on ER call. Okay, so. All right, so question for Wardah. So Habe is asking, what struggles did you face in trying to integrate MCON with public hospitals or ambulance services? Is there receptivity towards health tech?
Yeah, so there were quite a few challenges that I faced there. First of all, a lot of public hospitals don't have health information management systems, which meant that we then had to create a mechanism where someone could enter information manually. That actually worked out perfectly for us because we were then able to just create a program for them that they could use for their own record purposes as well. We kept it simple, and that way they had a good solution that they didn't have to pay much for, and we were able to get the data that we needed as well. But there definitely, the other problem is that when it comes to dealing with the public sector, the attitude perhaps is quite different from the private sector. And I think the bigger challenge was just to ensure that there was that kind of commitment towards following through on projects. And for that, really, it was just like, it still is just a matter of contacting as many people as I can, and then making sure that the project is reinforced through multiple contacts so that it keeps going. Yeah, that's it.
Is MCON actively recruiting more sites as well?
Yeah, we're in the process. What we decided to, so initially we were going hospital by hospital, and that approach we realized would take a lot of resources. And so we wanted to work with the government and then have a collective approach. So we are working with the KP government right now to, because they're doing a project with, or they were at least, the current political situation is kind of weird, but they were doing a project with Shaukat Khanum to integrate health information management systems in public hospitals. So this was the perfect add-on to that, where they could bring the system and then we would just add this on and allow communication between hospitals. And so we wanted to take that central approach so that we could contact multiple or implement it at multiple hospitals at once. And that way we would be able to actually create a meaningful network. It doesn't really make sense to connect 2 hospitals or 3 hospitals because, like, in practical terms. So that's still ongoing. This was, I suppose, when I started out, and I guess a lot of this is an important message for entrepreneurs. Like, you can't expect things to happen overnight. And I didn't start out with that expectation. I just started out with the expectation that I'm going to keep following this through, and then eventually it will fall into place one day. And so I realized that this is going to be a long process, and I'm willing to follow it through to where it goes.
Thank you. So that was the wrap-up message as well from Wardah for our student innovators, entrepreneurs, that it's not going to happen overnight. It is a journey, and who knows what the destination is. Just joking, Wardah, I'm sure you have like your targets and your KPIs and everything there. So same question to Akbar. Akbar, what message would you like to leave for our students or non-students for that matter, who are thinking about innovation, entrepreneurship, or are in early stage companies or startups, what would you,
I
how
think
would
the
you?
most important thing is to, to really believe in yourself and believe that you can do whatever you set out to do. And there are times where you fail or you fall down or things don't happen the way you anticipated or you targeted and all. But you don't let those get in your way. Each time you fall, you pull yourself back up and you learn from it and you move forward. And the sky is the limit. I mean, you can do anything you want. You just have to keep at it, keep doing it, and your time will come. If it's meant to be, it will happen. If not today, then tomorrow.
We're going to hold that thought, so like you said it, you're going to be a doctor. You want to be a doctor. So that'll
Let
happen
me
to
make
you.
medical devices first. That's the that's the challenge right now.
Alrighty. So we've got a few minutes to spare. If anybody would like to, if they haven't put in a comment or a question and they'd like to ask.
So my name
Yeah,
is
go ahead.
Fahad. Can I ask right now?
Yes, please go ahead, Fahad.
So I'm right now in final year, and over the 5 years, I've realized that I do not. I'm more interested in creating something than being in a baseline, more rather than practicing. So, what is the first step that I should be taking, like right after medical school? Like, should I do an internship at a medical device company? So I'm very unsure, like what's the next step I should take in order to pursue my direction towards entrepreneurship in medical devices or a field like that.
I think you can do anything. I mean, you could do an internship. You could work in a company that distributes medical devices. You could, work in a hospital and see, maybe work in ER and see what devices are there, what the need is. Obviously, for a company like ours, we've been hiring biomedical engineers, but we also have a need for doctors. Because obviously a doctor knows what's needed more than an engineer. Engineer will just build the product, but the actual need would come from a medical person. So yes, I would suggest that if that's what you want to do, then go for it. And then you can always return to medical practice if you change your mind. I mean,
and what do you think? Like a specialist would be more suited to more useful to a company of making medical devices than just like an MBBS graduate, because a specialist would have more knowledge about their field. So.
It depends what they're making. I mean, for example, we're developing respiratory aid devices. So particular to that, yes, a pulmonary therapist or a pulmonary expert would be best suited. But then if we want to branch out into other types of devices, then perhaps somebody who has a well-rounded view of the human body and the human condition and the types of devices needed could also be equally useful. So really, I don't think it really matters. I think all doctors have the same basic training and they have the same basic knowledge. The specialization comes later. Correct me if I'm wrong, Asad.
No, that's a very valid point, Akbar, that you're making, Fahad. If you're interested, other than the fact that you could consider joining CCIT, but that aside, I don't even know.
Dolphins will fight for you with that. There's going to be a tussle between us for you.
Oh yeah, you could actually, Fahad, you could go work for Akbar as well, or you could go work for Wardah. Wardah, are you hiring? Fahad, you could come talk to us. I would be happy to kind of like, I'm assuming you're a medical student here at AKU.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's just email us or email me, and then we can set up a time, and Mary and I and the rest of the team can talk to you about what are different options. We've done this. So over the past, I would say 6-7 years, a number of AKU students have started off their quote unquote careers with CCIT, and then they've gone on to do residencies as well as startups, and gone on for graduate school. 1-year fellowship and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of, there are options. There are options. You don't need to feel limited. And I think that's what Akbar was trying to say as well, that, you don't need to feel limited, that you've completed MBBS and that's the only thing that'll define you. I completely disagree. I don't think the MBBS degree is going to be the only thing defining you. Unless you want it to define you, it'll define you, but there are other things you could certainly consider, and innovation, entrepreneurship, great areas to consider.
Yeah, because I think like that's the in entrepreneurship there's like an exponential growth, from what I have understood up till now.
It comes
I
with its
wish it were
own,
like that.
yeah, it comes with its own issues as well. But it's exciting, and the whole purpose of doing these kinds of webinars is to excite and encourage students to think outside of the medical box, I guess. I don't know, whatever that means to you, but yeah. So come talk to us. Yeah, go ahead.
If I could just add to that, I'd say like there's things that you can start doing right now. You don't need to wait till you graduate. So like start looking around the hospital and look at what problems you see around you, right? Like so that you can become someone who can identify problems better. Start thinking of solutions right now. Like and the other thing is start acquiring a variety of skills right now and like just keep them in mind. Like for example, during my journey, I realized I had needed to have better financial management skills. I needed to know what business plans were, what business management is, right? These are things that you're not really exposed to as a medical student. I realized I needed to widen my circle in terms of having friends or colleagues or mentors and all of that from different industries, right? Because when you go towards making a team, it's not just the doctor who's there. You need people from different specialties and backgrounds, and it really helps if you can grow your circle that way and really identify people who inspire you in those fields and who may be able to then one day help you in your company if you create one, right? Instead of working in a job where you are assigned one role and you kind of like stay limited to that role by doing all of these things, or even exploring like other education degrees that could help you this way, you would be able to really create a portfolio and a background and a way of thinking for yourself, which helps you become a person who is then the founder of something, right? Not just a cog in the wheel in another company, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you for that, Wardah. Thank you for the question, Fahad. And we are done with the time. Thank you once again, Akbar and Wardah, and we'd love to stay connected. Let us know what you think of the book. And you could be critical about it. That's fine. We're thick-skinned. And for the rest of you folks, if you if you've been coming to our webinars, we would love to hear from you, what you think, how can we change, how can we improve, so on and so forth. If you want to suggest potential speakers or panelists, let us know, yourselves included. You've got to create a justification as to why it should be you. Anyways, thank you so much and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.